Local politics, Lynn, yes, indeed. And there was plenty of action this week on that front. And to help us break it down, we have two stellar friends who we both know well and have worked with for a long time, Delmarie Cobb and Dave McKinney. First, I'm going to give some brief introductions, and then we're going to get right into it. Delmarie Cobb is the proprietor of the Publicity Works, a public affairs, political consulting, and media relations firm. Among her many roles, Delmarie has served as the Illinois press secretary for the presidential bid of Hillary Clinton in 2016. In 1988, she was national traveling press secretary to presidential candidate Reverend Jesse Jackson. And in 1996, she became the first African-American press secretary to the Democratic National Convention. Tonight, we're going to talk with her about the recently retired Bobby Rush, who is leaving his first congressional district after 30 years. Welcome, Delmarie.
Thank you.
And we also have another old friend, and that's Dave McKinney, state politics reporter at WBEZ. Dave is a longtime former colleague of ours at the Chicago Sun-Times, where he spent 19 years as a Springfield bureau chief with additional stops at Reuters and the Daily Herald. His work has also appeared in Crain's Chicago Business, the New York Times, and Chicago Magazine. In 2014, the Washington Post named Dave one of the nation's best state house reporters. He's won many other local and national honors over many years, and he has excellent reporting to speak to Illinois politics, all things politics in Illinois, politics and government. Welcome, Dave.
Laura, thanks for such a lead up there. That's
right. The show is done. Thank you for joining us.
good to see you. Delmarie, how are you?
Yes,
fine. How are you doing?
Dave McKinney
right.
show. Yes.
Nice to get the gang together. And so I want to start with Bobby Rush, as I mentioned earlier, Delmarie. He's retiring after 30 years, a storied political career, former Black Panther, Chicago alderman, longtime member of the congressional delegation to Illinois. In fact, he's currently the dean of the congressional delegation, community-based pastor. And he's leaving, and there's a slew of people that want to take his place. But Delmarie, you've worked with him directly, and you worked with him in his run for the first congressional district. So I'd like to just hear a little bit more about your working relationship with him, and what is the big thing that we need to know about his legacy as he leaves office?
Well, I did do his first campaign in 1992 for Congress. And at the time, he wasn't supposed to run. Charlie Hayes was in office. He was the incumbent, and Charlie had said that he was only going to run one more time. And the Black community had decided, well, they were going to look for the next person to succeed Charlie. And Bobby Rush and Carolyn, his wife, and Stanley Watkins came to my office downtown and asked me what did I think about him running. And I said, well, you know, if you don't win this time, you'll be front runner next time. He said, that's what we were thinking. Will you do my race? And I said, yes. And it was interesting because Charlie actually just ran a terrible race. But the thing that really got Bobby over the top, because it was 50-50 neck and neck. And no, as bad as the race was for Charlie, it was really a 50-50 race. And as I said, the Black community wasn't supporting Bobby. But at the end, if you all remember, there was a front page article in the Tribune about congressmen who were writing bad checks. And really the checks they were writing checks ahead of their own paycheck so that they would be reimbursed at the bank would, the Washington Bank or the Congressional Bank would be reimbursed. So they weren't bad checks and as we know them to be. And it just so happens that Charlie had the worst record of all. And that happened the last 2 weeks of the campaign. And that's what got Bobby over the top.
And the rest is history.
And the rest is history. And one of the things he ran on was, and he talked about it all the time, bringing bacon back to the district, bringing the bacon back. And when you look at the people whose footsteps he followed in, you're talking about, going as far back as 1915, Oscar DePriest was the alderman, but he was also the first Black congressman. And then you had Ralph Metcalf, and you had William Dawson, and you had Harold Washington. These are major people, I mean, whose profiles were larger than life. And so that's what Bobby saw himself as someone who could follow in those kinds of footsteps and bring resources back to the district.
Well, actually, when he talked about the historic nature of the first congressional district in Chicago, which has always been anchored, a piece of it on the South Side, he also brought in our state's first Black female senator, Carol Moseley Braun, and you know who I'm going to next, President Barack Obama, who also is a product of that piece of political turf on the South Side of Chicago. So here's my question, Delmarie. We have so many people running right now. Bobby picked a woman who is not well known to endorse right out of the box. Karen Norrington Reeves, she runs a Cook County and City Jobs Agency. Why did he endorse so early? Do you have an analysis? You have Pat Dowell, the alderman running. You have, we don't even know the field yet. State Senator Jacqueline Collins is circulating petitions for Congress and her Senate seat. Jamal Cole, the neighborhood activist, is there. And Reverend Jesse Jackson's son, Jonathan, is thinking about running too. Why would Rush make an endorsement for days after a almost rookie candidate ran? I say almost rookie. Karen Norrington Reeves ran for alderman in 2007. So what's your analysis?
Well, we really don't know how many people will run, because when Jesse Jr. got in trouble and stepped down, 22 people ran for that seat. So the floodgates are still open, and we don't know until the petitions get turned in exactly how many people there will be vying for that seat. But I think that Bobby made up his mind before he announced that he was stepping down. And for whatever reason, whether he has a relationship with her, that a working relationship that he's had over the years, that may be why he chose her. And I think sometimes you choose somebody not really looking at the big picture of how many people are actually going to run. And, had she been the only one running for that seat, or against the 6 who were already announced, including Jamal Cole and some other community people who were already running, then she probably had a good chance. She might have been able to ride on his coattails. But, if you look at historically, Bobby hasn't necessarily had coattails,
Right.
because his sister has run for office. His son has run for office. And so you've got to ask, what coattails does he have? I
want to put out a hypothesis there. And that is, he is more than his being a congressman, he is a minister. And this is a district where ministers are very important. But then again, if Jonathan gets in, his father is the Reverend Jesse Jackson. So what do you make of that?
So no, if you just throw everything up in the air at that point, because the whole field changes, the whole dynamics of the field changes. It will be very exciting for certain, because let's just think about what those debates and forums will be like.
They will be chaotic. Now, when I talked to Mayor Lightfoot yesterday, she's in Washington, and I asked her about these congressional races. She said she is likely to endorse in the first, probably won't in the 6th, where we have Sean Casten and Marie Newman running against each other, but that's out in the suburbs. And interestingly, she wasn't sure what she's going to do in the 3rd district, kind of on the north side, that is designed to yield a Hispanic member of Congress. But I get why she said she wants to be actively involved in the South Side 1st congressional district. And I say South Side, everyone should know who we're talking to. It goes as far south as Bourbonnais on one end and Chahona on the other. It's really big, but the votes are there. So what do you think? Let me throw this out there. She will endorse in that one because this is the political turf she needs if she runs next year for re-election. And Dave, chime in on this if you have an analysis too, Laura. Everybody I'm sure has some insight on this one.
Go ahead,
Well,
Delmarie.
I just don't think that her endorsement will carry a lot of weight.
Really?
And I think, why would it? I mean, she has no,
She's the mayor.
she has no roots in the Black community on the South Side that she could carry that kind of weight and make a difference. That her endorsement is like an anointment. That's not going to happen.
Right,
So if I were her, if I were advising her, I would say take the same position in the first district that you're taking with the other districts and stay out of it.
wow.
And you know too, you're right, Lynn, she needs votes on the South Side, but she may be in a very precarious position in her reelection campaign. She may need votes all from many parts of the city that she once did well in. So she's got to balance. She's got to balance a lot of things, to balance a lot of interests in terms of what her race is going to look like. So, you know, and I think Delmarie's right. She doesn't want to look like she's picking and choosing endorsements in her own best interest. But Dave, what do you think? You have a thought on this?
Well, I think, you know, I mean, any election, it always comes down to who is she running against, and at this point, we don't know. I mean, Arnie Duncan's name has floated out there some. We know her general unpopularity. I mean, you know, and people have gotten a, you know, just sort of a sense of, you know, how things have evolved in the city under her. I mean, the crime issue, I think, has really left her vulnerable in a lot of neighborhoods, especially in the, you know, the north side, the south side. There's just no control to it, and so I think, you know, she has problems kind of at every level. I mean, except, as you point out at the opening of the show, Lynn, about you know, budgetarily. I mean, the city's kind of in a rare period of time where it feels you know, very unusual to have all the money that they do. But I just think that it's still early. We don't know quite what the dynamics are. We have to know who her opponent is. But Delmarie's analysis, I think, about staying out of it is not a bad one, because, like, you know, if she were to pick a candidate in the first district who flopped, I mean, that would not help her at all. And that's a big risk when you're running, you know, when you've got multiple candidates and a lot of unpredictability in a race like that.
And also, Pat Dowell is is an alderman. Why?
One of her closest allies. She runs her budget committee in the council.
I was surprised when she told me that, because I don't see where, and she said, if I endorse, I'm going to go all in, I'm going to raise money, knock on doors. I just don't see why, since you're going to get someone angry at you and especially if it's not clear who's going to win. See, in these big races, and this is true for governor, for anything in Illinois primary, you just need a plurality to win. So the nominee could have 21, 22%, which is why, by the way,
Exactly.
someone like Pat Dowell, who has a base, though much of her ward is not in the district. If you have a bit of a base, you go in maybe with a running start of 10 to 20, 12%. If you have something you could say is my people. So, you know, and that could be, when we talk about a base, and we'll get to this in the governor's race, it could be an ethnic group, it could be geography, it could be gender, but you kind of want to say, I have a base, and be able to articulate who it is. It has to be someone other than people of the universe on it. Yeah, so anyway, I don't know why Lori Lightfoot said she wanted to do it. It will be really interesting if she gets involved in the third, where one of the people running there is Alderman Gal Villegas, who I guess she's had a relationship like this.
Yeah, well, and you know, coming back to what Dave had said about you know, who might run against her, and the old saying, you can't beat somebody with nobody. And right now, as far as I can see, Arnie Duncan, who may very well get into the races, but he's the only name that I've seen, or a personality, a political person I've seen, who would be able to stand, you know, toe to toe with her. A lot of it, like, and you're going to have a very crowded race, so it's not going to just be her and Arnie Duncan. There's going to be a whole slew of people. Some of the also that ran last time will be back in, and others will run as well.
And you know, Fran Spielman has a story out from her podcast where she did an interview with Stacey Davis Gates Union, and you kind of get a vibe there. And we had her on our show ages ago, where we identified her as a potential mayoral contender. And in Fran's interview, it seems just to underscore that that she may really be in the running. All this to say, we're already talking about 2023, and we have so much to talk about in 2022, Laura. Should we pivot to the governor's race, or Delmarie and Dave, do we have?
Let's pivot away, and that race got really very interesting this week with especially on the GOP side with the entry of Richard Irvin, the mayor of Aurora. A lot of excitement. Reporters, particularly reporters like us, are very excited, but he's not talking to anyone yet. Strangely enough, he hasn't uttered a public word beyond his campaign video, etc.
Let me underscore that this slate that he's with. No member of that slate, and they're all being organized by an interrelated group of Republican operatives. They have given no interviews. Now, the word is maybe Irvin will pick one or two, a few people to talk to on this, but you could call it, if you're from the Pritzker perspective, who is available, they have noticed that they've done this rollout of the entire slate on this, and I don't know if these are people that should, I guess, be expected to talk to.
Well, I'm wondering, Delmarie, what do you think as a political consultant? Would you advise your slate to take this strategy?
No, I mean, it's a little strange. It's different than I've seen before, and I certainly wouldn't advise it. I would make my candidate available. And of course, everybody would have done an interview with him, because everybody would have wanted to do an interview with him, because it's a fascinating premise. The fact that he's African-American, he's the mayor of Aurora, everybody thought he was a Democrat, he's now a Republican. I mean, there's so much to go at there, and so much to tell. So everybody would have been chomping at the bit to do a story about him. But and I always say that, as a former reporter, if you don't talk to us, I'm still going to do the story. So you can either talk to me and get your side out, or you can see the story take shape without you, and then you've got to respond to it later. And so that's the position I think he's going to be in. He's going to have to respond to all these things, because there's going to be a story every day until he decides to come out and talk.
Well, David, do you think that the strategy, and these are Republican operatives, so who they are, all come out of the Kirk campaign, the Rauner administration. Some of them are very close to billionaire Ken Griffin, which is what everyone's waiting for, to see if he signs on to all of the slate, especially Irvin. What do you make of how they're introducing the slate, and especially Irvin, to a state that really may not know him at all?
Well, I mean, it's still very early. I mean, I think, the primary is June 28th. So there's plenty of time, I think, for him to kind of go out and articulate himself. But don't you think part of the reason that Irvin is anointed as he was here, that it was because of he's kind of the mystery man. I mean, he's a guy with very little record in Aurora. I mean, he's a one-term mayor. There's just there aren't votes that you can point to. You got his voting record, of course. But he's a mystery, and you could sort of sense today, or it was yesterday, I guess, Governor Pritzker was asked about him, and you could sense a little bit of frustration about when is he going to come out in the open and talk, because of course they're chomping at the bit for him to make some sort of faux pas or whatever that they can build off of. But I think that they're going to be strategic in the way they roll this stuff out, and how he's made available. You figure there are going to be debates in this whole campaign, but I think one of the reactions that I can't remember which outlet had it, but somebody talked to Jim Edgar about all of this.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really fascinating to hear Edgar's take on it, and how, Irvin is a former member of the Edgar Fellows, which is it's a group that Edgar has formed to kind of just, educate future generations of leaders and such. And Edgar said he was very impressed by Irvin during that time, but he sort of hinted that, Irvin might have trouble getting out of a primary. And I think the conventional thinking was that a guy like Darren Bailey, for whom there is a great deal of fervor once you go downstate south of I-80, is the odds-on favorite. I don't know. I mean, I think Bailey doesn't have money, and that's the difference here. Irvin has potential to have a lot of money, tens of millions of dollars thrown at him. by Ken Griffin.
By Ken Griffin, right.
Absolutely, who was going to be all in on this. And so you figure that the airwaves are going to be blanketed here in the Chicago area and in the collar counties. But if you look at just the data from the 2018 Republican primary, if you exclude Cook County and the 5 collar counties, 53% of the primary vote is from, the rest of the counties downstate. And you figure that Bailey would have some advantage there. But I just have a lot of people down there who really, really like Darren Bailey.
So I so agree with you. So for everyone who's listening, he's a state senator, but he also comes out of the Trump wing of the Republican Party. He's closely allied with freshman Representative Mary Miller, who is a member in good standing of the Marjorie Taylor Greene wing of the Republican Party. And as we discussed in our earlier segment, she's endorsed by Trump. Her husband is a member of the Illinois legislature. And so here's why Bailey, if we had the primary today, would probably win. He's well known, and among the base, the people who will turn out, my analysis is he has an animated base, which could probably give him maybe even a national grassroots fundraising advantage. We'll see. And in a short time, we'll get Mary Miller did very well with small donors from all over the place because of, she's in that Marjorie Taylor Greene wing of the party. And now she has, can leverage the Trump endorsement. And when you have the Trump base, we know, even though it's a blue state in Illinois, there is a big number of people who are part of that. And that's why Bailey now has a running start in a primary where you could win with just 20-something%. So I don't know. So what does Bailey do then? Just stick around Northern Illinois and work the suburbs, or what, guys? What do you think?
You know what? I think if I were Bailey, I would start.
I meant Irvin.
What does Irvin do? Well, here's an interesting thing. I mean, that while Irvin himself has not been out making the rounds, I mean, there have been sort of, press contacts have been kind of circulating and introducing themselves and such.
Yes.
And when I had a conversation with one of Irvin's people the other day, the thought that crossed my mind was, well, what is Irvin going to say if you ask him about the 2020 election and whether it's legitimate? And that's sort of one of the litmus tests in the Republican primary, because all the Trump people, of course, are going to say it wasn't. And that, you could sense that they weren't quite ready to say anything about that yet. And who knows if they will. But I think if you're Irvin, you've got to be prepared to kind of dangle a little bit of that red meat to the audience downstate and get yourself down there and ingratiate yourself with them.
So I have a question for the three of you, because I am grappling with this. So I tried a version of that with one of Irvin's people and other Republicans. And when you ask who won the election, they'll say, well, we know that Biden is the president. But you see how artful that is? So I think that's the play, is how do we as reporters and you as a consultant, I just have to figure out a way they see, so it kind of sounds like they answered the question. Biden is the president. That's not really, it's a good answer. But
then they're going to, us reporters, us dogged reporters, going to just keep asking that question because it's clear that it wasn't answered. And I think that that's going to be something that's going to dog him throughout the campaign. If he's going to have to sell it one way or the other. And I don't know though that I agree that that's going to be a disadvantage for him to, maybe in Southern Illinois that is red meat, that they don't believe that Biden is the president. But Northern Illinois, in the suburbs, in the areas that you're talking about, Dave, in the Cook County suburbs and beyond, most people believe that the election has been settled. So there's advantages and disadvantages how he answers that question. But I don't think that reporters are going to stop until he answers that question.
That's why they probably haven't rolled him out right now.
Well, and I think the big question is, where will this primary be won? Will it be won in the collar counties, or will it be won downstate? And I think, Laura, I think you're absolutely right. I think Irvin stands a pretty good chance of doing pretty well in the 5 collar counties, and especially when you take into account if Ken Griffin is putting in these tens of millions of dollars that are likely, he's going to be blanketing the airwaves, and eventually people are going to know him. And you're dealing with a more moderate audience for the most part among Republican primary voters. And so, is there enough there to be able to dominate the primary? And I think there could be, but downstate is still a force.
Sure. I want to get Delmarie in here to get her take, and actually a follow up to that. Delmarie is Irvin and the slate appears to be playing on making crime a major issue. The J.B. Pritzker and Democrats in Illinois have been soft on crime. The crime is out of control. Dave mentioned the crime problems right here in Chicago. What's your take on whether or not that's a good strategy?
Well, Dave said actually everything I was going to say about the strategy, because I do believe that's the strategy, is that they're going after the collar counties. When you look at, and I know this was the general election, but Pat Quinn, he won governor by only winning 2 counties out of 102 counties. So it's not like it can't be done. It can be done. All you have to do is concentrate. And when you have the money to do the media buy and to tailor your message, for a lot of people, that's all they're going to know. And they're going to vote for him because they want to appear that they're liberal or whatever, or moderate or whatever. And but I do think in terms of crime, that is a number one issue on many people's minds right now. And it doesn't matter what the real reason is for it. The fact is that people feel ill at ease. They don't feel safe. They don't feel like they're feeling like they're a target. And that goes across the board. I don't care what color you are.
He is, so here's what's going to happen, I think, as the weeks unfold. The reporters writ large in our journalism community are going to scrub Aurora, the record on crime, policing, the racial makeup of the police force. He is the mayor. We don't know if this is what he's running on. That city will figure prominently, I think, in a lot of the efforts to learn more about him. And he has a great bio: military, attorney, prosecutor in Kane County, prosecutor in Cook County, and mayor. Now, one of the things he did that I think has signaled alert to the right in his fundraising appeal, he talking about crime, he didn't quite say what a governor could do, but he said, I will remove liberal, or a word like that, prosecutors who let people out who they shouldn't. You can't, he must know, or his team must know, a governor cannot remove an elected official no matter their politics. Now, I think that was just a sloppy, unforced error, but it sure did send a message that had to be aimed at Cook County State's Attorney Kim Foxx. But Dave and Delmarie, do you think, we could fact check this thing all we want? Is it possible to run a campaign to the right and do it on a factually correct basis here?
Well, one of the things, most people don't know that. So people don't get into the weeds. You can say that, it sounds good, and they'll go for it. They don't know that the governor doesn't do it, or the mayor does it. They don't know that. So if it sounds good, they'll believe it. The other thing is, if I remember correctly, and wasn't the police chief of Aurora one of the candidates for police chief in Chicago?
I think that's true. It was a woman, correct?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
so,
I think she's no longer, I think she's retired now, but yes.
Yes, so he can say, I had a police chief that was so good that even the city of Chicago wanted
That's a great line.
So, there are things, there are spins, and, and this is what I do. So I'm looking at how do you spin this to say that not only am I going to be tough on crime, but I'm a great leader in terms of identifying those who are effective on crime.
So he picked as a running mate someone I just never knew. She's in State House leadership, but I don't follow it. Dave, she is 29 or 30, Avery born, and she's supposed to be big up and comer. And what does she bring to the ticket?
Well, she brings youth. She brings, a firm downstate presence. She really was climbing the ladder really fast. At age 29, she's I think she may be the youngest member of that caucus, the House Republican caucus. She is a pretty forceful speaker too. I've heard her give floor speeches in Springfield, and she's a very, very persuasive speaker. So, she could be helpful to him, particularly downstate, particularly with women. Women, I think, are going to be an issue for Darren Bailey. But I think the way this thing swings, I mean, besides crime, I think you have taxes. I think you have economy issues that are out there that Irvin wants to exploit. There was a fundraising letter email that went out this afternoon where, I can't remember, I think taxes was number one on his list, a survey of people, what they thought about whether their taxes were too high. I mean, I think we know how people would vote on that, but he, I think he and Griffin probably are angling somewhat to build off the defeat of the graduated income tax amendment and point to that and say, this is what your governor, J.B. Pritzker, wanted to bring to you. He wanted to increase your taxes. And we've got 7% inflation, and bacon is going up and cars are going up and everything like that. And that's going to be a very persuasive kind of argument that a lot of people will buy into. But back on Bailey, I think a real wild card with him is if he can somehow finagle an endorsement from Donald Trump, a tweet, a statement, anything. I think that could really throw this primary up for, it could just upend it.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think he's the one to watch more than others. So quickly, we're going a little overtime, everybody. I hope it's okay because we're having such a great discussion. But Jesse Sullivan hasn't picked a running mate, and he is, I don't know, again, viewers, so under the laws now, you have to run as a ticket. So you have to say, I'm running, and here's who is my lieutenant governor. Everyone else picked somebody, he hasn't. So I called that campaign better get going on that, otherwise it's not a real campaign. The others running, former state lawmaker Shrimp, and I hope I say his last name right, Gary Rabin, where I don't even see where they could fit in and what their base is, given that you have Bailey looking at the far right and the Trump Republicans, and Irvin looking for, I guess, everybody else in the suburbs who doesn't want the Trump Republican candidate to be the nominee. What do you guys think?
Well, I think definitely Irvin is going for, he's modeling himself as the moderate. And since we have a history in Illinois of electing moderate Republicans, that's not far-fetched. And I think that's where he's going for sure.
Okay, well, on that thought, we're going to wrap it up. We are going to be having all these great discussions between now and June.